Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
Recording it now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Not So Trek Live this week. Going to introduce the best co-host in the galaxy, Dan.
Hey
Um,
guys, if you guys are watching this on the day that it was released, the reason why we're doing this pre-recorded is because Bill is on Ryza right now.
I am in Risa as this is going out. I am not spacebound at this moment. Um, Much needed vacation. Happy to say. But happy to be here doing this. And Our topic for this week is the Kelvin Timeline. We've gotten a lot of questions about this over the past few weeks as we've done our last few episodes. Broad topics, talking about things we love, characters we love, and such. The Kelvin Timeline inevitably comes up in these kinds of topics. So we thought it best to kind of tackle it early on and put our cards on the table, as far as how we feel about it and our take. And yeah, so Dan, what do you like about the Kelvin timeline, just broadly speaking? Like, what sticks out to you as a positive?
um, there's a lot of things I like. I like that
Into
it brought a lot of fans. Um, it brought
yeah,
me into the universe of Star Trek, so that's what I kind of really like it did a good
yeah,
job introducing itself and
yeah,
kind of bringing back the Trek universe. I think I like how, just kind of starting off with 09, I like how it kind of just separated itself from the timeline, the prime
yeah,
timeline, because um, I don't think anyone was looking for kind of like a remake or anything like that. So I think
yeah.
they did a good job of kind of creating, although they didn't know it at the time, but I think that that was good. Um,
Hmm.
I love the characters. Uh, I think they're similar in a lot of ways, but they're also a lot different, which
Yeah.
I kind of like.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are kind of just my brief thoughts about what I like. What do you get? What do you like about the
Um,
Kelvin
I,
timeline?
I totally agree with everything you said. I think the number one thing that it accomplished and the best thing that it did was it opened the door for a lot of new people. Um, you know, I personally know people who um, were not into Star Trek at all, but went into 2009 and um, kind of fell in love with it. And even if they didn't, you know, go you know, the full way and watch every hour of it ever
Mm-hmm.
made as a result of it, they were more conscious of it, more understanding of it, understood, came away with it kind of with a better idea of what Star Trek's getting at, what it's trying to do. So I think it really does work as an entry point for people because one of the things that I think Star Trek kind of struggles with a little bit is it's so big that it's intimidating for people. I
Mm-hmm.
think to dive into. People don't know where to start. People are overwhelmed by how much of it there is. It's a big project, and these movies provide a easy access, um,
It's kind of like a
easily
gateway
consumed.
into the universe, kind of.
It
Yeah,
it
yeah,
definitely is.
yeah.
I think it really works on that level. It's very it harkens back to the things that people know about Star Trek just from pop culture. It focuses on the characters that I think most permeated that with the TOS characters,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it um, the production values and um, the just the competence of the product. Not that any of the other stuff that came before is not well done. It certainly is, but this is done with a lot of money, a lot of resources, and um, it's kind of Star Trek on a whole nother level. So I think it works really well for the gateway aspect because it's flashy, but I think the substance is really good too. I think the characters are really well done, and something that sticks out to me is I think these movies do a really good job of fleshing out some of the lesser characters, more so than TOS ever did.
Mm-hmm.
The TOS movies ever did.
Yeah.
The characters like Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov get a lot more to do in these movies, and I think it makes the crew feel more like a family, big picture, like the whole group of them, more so than the three at the top. I think it does a really nice job of taking the sensibilities that the other shows, the newer shows, kind of did with being more ensemble. You know, bigger stuff for the whole group to do, and kind of incorporating that into TOS.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that. What else? I mean, I've always liked them. You know, I liked it from the beginning. I liked it for what it was. I think for all the reasons I kind of just said about being like a gateway, a fresh new look, a way for people to get into it. I think it's a completely pretty unequivocal success on that level. So I was always fond of it. I always liked it. You know, there's more we're going to talk about coming up, but on a baseline, I think that's what I like most about it.
Mm-hmm.
What are there any things that you don't like? Are there things that you would change if you were, you know, all power, if you were Q and you had the ability to just go and
Mm-hmm.
change anything about these movies? What would you want to do?
I don't know. I don't like it when it tries to be something that it isn't.
Hmm.
I feel like sometimes it tries to just be like kind of just another action movie or something like that. And
Hmm.
I don't think that I just don't think it works out to put, the Star Trek name on it and just be like kind of like an actiony flick.
Yeah.
And when it tries, also what I don't like when it tries to be too hard, like it tries to be something like it's like Into Darkness, for example. It's like
Hmm.
we're not looking for a remake. We're not looking for
Yeah.
you to be like what we're what we've seen in the past in the prime timeline. It's just I don't know. I just think that it should just go in its own direction and try to
Yeah.
be what it's going to be and not try to, you know, be a part of the prime timeline and stuff like that. So that's what I don't
Yeah.
like about it.
I'm totally on the same page. In fact, mostly with the first thing you said about it, sometimes feeling a little bit like too much of a sometimes standard issue action movie. I think back to specifically the first two, '09 and Into Darkness. I think there are moments or pockets of those movies that feel actiony for just being action, like just for
Mm-hmm.
the sake of doing it. I think of scenes like in '09, I kind of tune out in pockets of it a little bit. I love it, I really do. It's towards
Mm-hmm.
the top of my list, but
Yeah.
there are little pockets of it that I'm like, oh man, is this really necessary?
Yeah.
Little silly things like Scotty when they beam up through trans warp, which is a whole other thing
Yeah.
that a lot of people have issues with. But
Mm-hmm.
when the Enterprise is warping towards the armada, I guess, of Federation ships are supposedly like gathering
Yeah.
to fight the armada before Kirk gets involved and changes course. When they beam up, Kirk and Scotty gets stuck in this like pipe of the pipeline of the ship, the sewage, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not sewage, but the water line of the ship.
Yeah.
Um, and Kirk's got to like run around and get him out. Like things
Yeah.
like that are just strike me as like kind of a waste of time. Like action just for action's
Mm-hmm.
sake.
Yeah.
The Kirk being chased by the monster on Delta Vega, like
Yeah.
it's cool, but
Insert action scene here in the
yeah, it
script.
feels
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, the Klingon encounter, I guess, in Into Darkness too, like the little chase scene.
The shuttlecraft and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And
what I like most about these movies is the expansion on the characters, and I like the scenes that surround all those things. Like
mm-hmm.
the dialogue on the shuttle between Kirk, Spock, and Uhura is great. Like when they're on their way down, but once the action starts, I kind of tune out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just kind of standard science fiction action stuff at times. Some of it's really good. Some of the scenes are better than others, but there are, particularly in the first two movies, those pockets that sort of take me out of it. And I think you put it perfectly where you said that it's trying to be something that it's kind of not. Like I wish they kind of steered away from that. And I think they kind of did in Beyond. I felt less of that in Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as much of a tune out factor with like, oh, here's another action scene. The only one that I guess I could possibly cite, having seen it a good handful of times, is the Kirk and Chekhov scene, like getting back onto the salvaged
oh yeah, that's what I was just
saucer
thinking.
section.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that sequence, I guess, kind of not to the same level as some of the others in the first two movies, but
mm-hmm.
that might be the one time in that movie where I kind of sort of tune out a little bit with, oh, here we go with another action scene.
Yeah,
There's good stuff.
because
Good.
it can it made sense to kind of test her trust.
Yeah.
But after that, when they were just running from him and shooting stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm just like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, like that.
yeah,
That's the kind of stuff I could really do without
yeah,
easily.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, what else do we have here? So
And
how would you go ahead? What were you
and
gonna say?
just know, guys, that we're still, even though it's pre-recorded, we're gonna try to do away with the editing just to get that kind of live feel. So if we
Yeah.
do like stop and pause and
Hmm.
stuff like that,
Bear with
just
us.
know it's still the Trek Live you guys know and love. So
Yeah. We're kind of going for the unfiltered, raw conversation. We're
yeah.
not looking to be like finely polished and
Hmm.
edited. So yeah, bear with us a little bit and treat it like it's live. Um, how would you say that it's changed, Dan? Like from '09 into beyond, like what for better or worse, however you feel. I know how you feel, but um,
Yeah.
how would you define the change
So
that?
coming into '09, I was just like super excited. I downloaded the trailer, watched it 100 times, was excited. I didn't go to the premiere, but I went to the movie theater and
Hmm.
watched it and I loved it. And over time, and then that kind of got me into watching everything in the Prime timeline. And then Into Darkness came out, and
Hmm.
that excitement kind of that was with '09 just came with me. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with Into Darkness.
Hmm.
Um, it was, yeah, Into Darkness is another thing we could just go into for a whole show.
Hmm.
But and then I went into Beyond, just really with an open mind, not trying to get my hopes up, not trying to get too excited, to just go in there and just see it for what it was. And I was blown away. So I guess it was kind of like definitely up and then kind of like Into Darkness, I rag on it a lot, but it has its
Hmm.
moments. So down with Into
It does.
Darkness, and then just shot up with Beyond. I loved Beyond, so it's definitely been a roller coaster ride. But I think with even with the Prime Timeline movies, you could say that there have been
Yeah.
movies like
True.
that. So
Absolutely.
so it's definitely changed. It hasn't been constant for me. So
Hmm.
what about for you? How's it changed?
I've been pretty positive with it the whole way because I kind of try to go into them with eyes wide open. I know what these movies are trying to do, and I know I understand, I guess, the dynamic behind them. These are huge, unlike the prime timeline movies, or with the possible exception of the motion picture. Those movies kind of got to fly under the radar a little bit. They weren't very expensive. They
Mm-hmm.
were targeted at a specific audience. They knew exactly what they were getting making them. They knew they could make it for this amount of money and make that. These movies are huge summer blockbusters, tentpole
Yeah,
for
they're
a
under the
struggling
microscope
studio.
too.
Yeah. So there's a big equation going into these movies, and I kind of go into it expecting certain things. Um, and for what they are, I think all three of them are successful. I agree with you. I think Into Darkness is the weakest of the three. Um, I have cooled on it as time has gone on. I'm still fond of it. I think it has really nice moments in it. There are things about it that I like, but there are things about it that do drive me insane. The more I go back to it. But '09, I went into kind of going back to the question, the whole evolution of it. '09, I went
Progression.
into yeah, extremely excited. I was dying for new Star Trek. I like I kind of said in the intro episode, I've been into Star Trek since I can remember. I was indoctrinated into it as a baby. Um, so growing up, I had from the time I was in grade school through high school, I had new Star Trek every week, and for a good chunk of it through elementary school and middle school, I had 2 episodes of Star Trek every
Mm-hmm.
week with TNG and DS9 and Voyager all kind of running concurrently. Um, so for the first 18 years of my life, there was kind of new Star Trek content coming every week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, when Enterprise stopped, it was like, wow, like just not what it was something totally new. I didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just the idea of having something new with fresh eyes, different take on it, was very exciting. I was open minded to it. I was very conscious of the um, fan anticipation of it. There was a lot of divisiveness.
Yeah.
Going into it, a lot of people were like eager not to like it. Some people were more open-minded than others. So I was very conscious of all that and kind of ready to take a side. And I fell squarely on the side of this is good for Star Trek. Did I think it was absolutely perfect, exactly what I would have done? No. But for what it was, I was happy with it, and I was a big fan of that movie. Pretty much right out of the gate. I think it did a lot of good for the franchise, like I kind of just said. And I have to shout out Enterprise Extra, who on Twitter, we're going to get into some Twitter response in a bit, but specifically, he cited the opening scene of 2009,
Yeah.
and I can remember sitting in the theater watching it for the first time, and thinking about the last Star Trek movie, especially Nemesis, and Nemesis is like a slog, man. It's just tired and like just slow and just there's just no life to it for a good chunk of it. And then this movie starts, and in the first 10 minutes, it's like a revelation. Like it's vibrant, it's bright, it's emotional, it's new. It's got everything feels new again. It's exciting. So it really was like a huge shot in the arm right off the bat. The opening scene in '09, as Enterprise Extra said, rightfully as usual, is some of the best stuff ever done in Star Trek, if you ask me. If I was to pick a favorite scene in Star Trek, that would be in the conversation. That opening prologue in '09. So that had me right off the bat. Into Darkness, I loved when it came out. I was a defender of it, and I've become slightly less so as time has gone on. I understand the faults, and a lot of those things bother me too. Like Dan said, and I agree, we could do a whole episode on Into Darkness very easily
Yeah.
because of how many. It's a frustratingly mixed bag. And I fall more on the positive side than the negative side, but there's so many different directions to go in because it's so schizophrenic. Like there's so many good things and so many bad things. And then Beyond, I instantly was 100% behind. The first two movies, I think, kind of like we were just talking about with what we like and don't like. I think the first two movies suffered more from, and a little bit of an identity crisis, not knowing exactly what it wanted to be. Like, I think those movies are Star Trek movies through and through, but they are more trying to walk the line of, we want to appeal to Star Wars fans, we want to appeal to general action fans, and it has these pockets that we were just talking about that speak to those people. And Beyond, I think, kind of sheds a lot of that. Beyond is kind of unapologetically a Star Trek movie, at least to me. And I just felt that right off the bat. I felt like it was speaking to me as a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost argue that I think even when you start something new like that, you need those first two movies to kind of
Yeah,
find your sweet spot because,
definitely.
with the Prime Timeline movies, they had, the original series to fall back on and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, these movies were, it kind of, especially '09, needed to be what it needed to be.
yeah.
It needed to, it's like a pilot. It's really kind of just getting the ball rolling. And I think it even more so feels that way now, going back and looking at it as a part of the series. It really feels like kind of just setup. It's about these people coming together. And, I love the message of, no matter what, happens, destiny is going to bring these people together. I think that's a great theme. And somebody
Yeah.
cited that. I think it was Ian, cited that on Twitter as well. And that's a great point. I do love that, what that says. I love that '09 takes that position.
Yeah, I think the key to enjoying these movies is just keeping an open mind. And
Yeah.
that could be said with all of Star Trek because, people
Mm-hmm.
hate on Voyager, people hate on Enterprise, but I mean, if you keep an open mind, you can enjoy it
Yeah,
just as much
absolutely.
as the next guy. So,
Mm-hmm. Star Trek just has such a like a baked in. People have baked in expectations of what they want it to be. Usually it's tied to what they fell into it with. If they're TNG babies that fell in love with it through TNG, I think a lot of people try to look at it through that lens, and when it strays too far, it's like no, 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 and it's it can be a challenge for people, and I get it, like because it is something that people care deeply about. Like it's not just your run-of-the-mill TV show for a lot of
Mm-mm.
people. It's not, you know,
It's the reason
I
why
don't
we're
want to
doing
name other
this.
shows. Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
just inspires so much more passion than the typical TV show. It
Hmm.
really generates a lot of buy-in, and people get really fired up about it, and they want certain things from it.
Hmm.
And I love that about it. But it is a challenge that it has to deal with every time it comes out with something new, whether it's these movies or what it's going to be with Discovery, which we're going to be talking about soon. There's a lot of built-in expectations that people have. People want it to be a certain way. It's got to fit in this certain box, but it can't, and they don't want it to be repetitive. Voyager and Enterprise specifically took a lot of heat for sometimes feeling too much like TNG. At the time, especially, people hit it for that a lot. Like it wasn't being different enough. But then when it goes out and is different, people react negatively to that
Yeah, you
as well.
can't win on that in that
You can't
situation.
win. Yeah, the only way you win is by keeping at it, and the more you do it, and the more it's out, and the more it's out there, and people are revisiting it and giving it another chance. What happens to Star Trek fans,
Hmm.
inevitably, it seems to be, is um, they give it another chance in time, and then they realize, hey, that wasn't so bad after all.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what happens, and I think that's happening to the Kelvin timeline, and I think a lot of that has to do with Beyond. I think Beyond won back a lot of people um, who kind of fell out of it
Yeah, I think
from
it's
its
just kind
darkness.
of the saving grace. Yeah,
Yes, it
for the.
really
I mean, not saving grace, but it
for a lot of
definitely.
people it was.
Yeah. It. It made people like tip their caps to this Kelvin timeline. It's like, okay, there's some respect. That was pretty good. So.
Yeah. Hmm. One other thing I kind of do want to go back to that I should have talked about in the what we like. I'd be insane if I didn't say the cast is like perfect
Spot
from top
on.
to bottom. Like the entire for what should have been like an impossible job of recasting these characters, especially the big ones. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, these iconic, you know, well-known characters that people really identify with the actors. They could not have done a better job. I completely accept these actors as these characters at this point, and I have for a long time from basically the beginning. But I think I noticed that most in Beyond. Beyond kind of had me thinking about this, talking about that. Um, I remember thinking in Beyond, like, wow, I totally 100% unequivocally accept these actors as these characters at this point. Um, and that's definitely one of the things that these movies have done well. They have to be commended for taking a nearly impossible task and just hitting a home run with finding actors who can embody these characters and give them new life. And like you said, they're different, but they're the same as well. Like
Yeah.
they walk that line really well.
Hmm.
The things you expect out of these characters are there, but with a different twist. That's understandable because of what these movies are with the alternate timeline, and
Hmm.
people are coming from maybe a little bit of a different experience. It's exploring how people are going to be different yet the same, likely, um, given slightly different circumstances.
Yeah, I like the characters because at first, I liked the characters,
Mm-hmm.
but now from Beyond, it's like I actually care about them. It's
Yeah,
like
I agree.
so. I think they did a good job with that in Beyond for sure.
Yeah, I think the structure of Beyond with splitting them up and putting them in pairs, and
Hmm.
I think that was really helpful. I think
Hmm.
it put the spotlight on everybody and gave them all like, a little bit of a different look.
Everybody got some
Level the
screen
playing field.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
everybody's got moments in it,
Hmm.
and I think it really raised the bar for me. I think it's on another level. I think a strict. I think if you're just a movie fan, looking at these movies as just sci-fi action movies, um, I think there's a good chance if you come into it without any expectation of Star Trek that you may come out of it thinking Beyond's the weakest of the three. But if you come into it with a love of Star Trek and you're looking at it from the lens of these are Star Trek movies, I I think it's really easy to fall into the Beyond is easily the best of the three, and
Hmm.
the response that we've gotten on Twitter has kind of indicated that as well. A lot of people, um, surprisingly, a surprisingly high number of people have said that Beyond is their favorite of the three. Um, and I think that's because of how well it just captures that Star Trek spirit, and it is like through and through a Star Trek movie. Um, so. So where do you want to see where do you want to see it go from here? Like if assuming we're getting a fourth movie, which I think we all kind of figure will happen at some point.
Yeah.
Uh, is there a direction you want to see it go in? Is there something you want to see it do? Um,
Um, I would just, I don't know, I can't speak to like storyline and stuff like that, but I
yeah.
would just take what they learned from all of the three movies and kind of incorporate um, what they learned into the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, it's easy for the cast to get split up and stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think it's definitely promising because I think Beyond just had such a success that they're definitely gonna in the next maybe 3 or 4 years they'll put out another one. But
Yeah, you would hope. I
yeah,
would hope so.
yeah. I have
I hope.
a follow up question after this that's I haven't mentioned yet, so it's gonna be off the cuff, so it should be fun. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, where do you
Um,
hope it goes?
I like you. I hope they learn from what has come before, and I hope the lesson that they take away from the Into Darkness and compared to Beyond experience is that going original is the way to go.
Yeah,
Do something new. Tell an original story that pays respect in its you know, using tone and character moments. Like those things can pay respect much better, much more effectively um, than pulling a character, say, or a full storyline. Like once you get into that, like Into Darkness did, it's a hard thing to do. It forces people to compare, something that's new to something that they've loved for, years and years and years before.
yeah,
I think it's a
exactly.
misstep.
Hmm.
I think it's just asking for trouble. And I think Beyond was the success it was with Star Trek fans because it took a new direction.
Hmm.
It was fresh and didn't try to be something that already came before. And
Yeah,
I'll defend. I don't look at Into Darkness like a Wrath of Khan remake at all. I think the it has a scene in it that I know we're hoping to talk about at some point that clearly is what the problem is for a lot of people and why they would say that. But everything up to that point has nothing to do with the Wrath of Khan.
no.
It is its own thing.
Hmm.
Um, if that scene played differently, if they didn't go the way they went with that specific scene, I don't think anybody could call it a Wrath of Khan rehash, remake, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, it's just utilizing a character that TOS and the TOS movies used.
Yeah,
Um, but even doing that, I think, is asking for trouble. I think the lesson, hopefully learned, is be bold, do something different, do something new, tell an original story, introduce new characters. Um,
yeah. Don't force anything. Just
yeah,
have it feel natural and do something original. Not try to force
right,
anything. I hope
exactly.
that's like the corporate takeover. I don't want them to force anything. I want them
Hmm.
to, and I think they have the tools to do it. Especially with Simon Pegg and a
Hmm.
bunch of those people on the production side that do care about Star Trek. So I think if they
Yeah.
keep that core together, I think that um, nothing but good stuff can come out.
Hmm. I would
So
like to see Simon Pegg stay involved from the creative side of things because I think
yeah,
his love of Star Trek totally came through
hmm,
and beyond. I think the
yeah,
respect for the characters, respect for the canon, um, you know, things like calling back to Enterprise obviously makes people like me, the resident Enterprise apologist, very happy. Um, like those kinds of things are like flashy and like wow, look at that kind of cool moments, but
hmm,
it really does pay a lot of respect. And it shows care in it. It's they're not just doing a thing. They're
yeah,
not just making a movie. They're conscious of what came before and what has gone around this thing, gone on around this thing.
yeah.
Um, so I hope they keep that kind of like you're saying, keep those core people who bring that element in the fold.
So
Let those
that
voices speak. Yeah.
yeah. That being said, to kind of end this topic of hope, hope to where do you see it going?
Mm-hmm.
Could this Kelvin Timeline crew make their own TV show?
I would 100% watch it. I would
Could they?
love to
Could they
see.
do it?
Could they do it?
Yeah.
Feasibly, I don't think it'll happen. I think getting somebody. I think I don't think Chris Pine's going to be interested in making a weekly TV show.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think there's just too many heavy hitters.
yeah,
But
the cast is heavy for that.
yeah,
Like you're saying,
yeah,
I think some of those actors are not, and I think it would be expensive. I came away from the first two movies saying I would watch a TV show with this cast,
yeah,
with these in this universe with this ship. I would sign me
yeah,
up in a second.
yeah,
Uh, I'd be all about it. I have friends who are not Star Trek fans, like per se, who go to these movies with me and say I would watch a show with those characters,
yeah.
with those actors playing those characters.
Hmm.
So I would love it. And I think it would be a success. I think it would be a hit. I think they would do a good job with it.
Yeah.
Um, logistically, I think it would be next
Too
to
much.
impossible. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with actors like Chris Pine being a major movie star at this point, and Simon Pegg is in a world of his own, writing movies, producing movies,
Hmm.
doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it would be a challenge to corral all these people. Zoe Saldana is, she's got Trek, she's got Guardians of the Galaxy, she's got
That's
Avatar,
true. Yeah,
she is like book solid.
yeah.
Um, but it's a shame. I think about it all the time when I'm
Yeah,
watching these
that's what
films.
I was just
Man,
thinking that when we were
I
talking, I
just
was like, if this cast ever did a TV show.
I would love it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Like, kind of, I think you kind of even alluded to this with like needing the first two movies to build this up and allow Beyond to be what it is. Comparing it to TOS or any of the other shows, like these are movies that are kind of telling their own story, doing their own thing without the background that the other movies have, the shows have. I mean, you get 6 hours of this. I think it would be helpful for these movies to have more stuff. I know that there's a pretty long running comic series that I can't say that I've read. I haven't gotten into all that.
Hmm.
But the more stuff there is to like flesh this universe out and flesh these characters out, I think would do a lot of good for the Kelvin timeline. I
Yeah.
just think that people have a hard time buying into it completely just because there's not enough of it, especially when you're a trained Star Trek fan who's used to being able to like know every corner of everything
Yeah.
seemingly of what's going on around these shows. So I would love it. Sign me
Hmm.
up.
Yeah.
Um, do we want to talk about some of the Twitter response that we got? Just kind of broadly speaking, like we asked a couple of different questions to the Trek Live community since we
Hmm.
can't be live this week. We wanted to get some thoughts, some responses to what we're kind of talking about here. Um, you know, Broadly speaking, I think a lot of people agree with what we've kind of talked about with um, the experience of the Kelvin timeline and the evolution of it. I guess we got a lot of feedback saying that they loved '09, they liked '09 to varying degrees, I guess. A little cooler on Into Darkness, but fell in love all over again with Beyond.
Hmm.
That seems to be a really common thread.
Which I was really surprised about. I was expecting to be, I expected some fans to be like the Kelvin timeline, but I also thought I would see some people like on the other side of the fence where it's like, meh, not
Yeah,
really
me
my
too.
thing, and it's
Hmm.
I don't know. And I think there was a guy on there that was kind of like he was, he grew up in the prime timeline, and he was really the prime timeline was really close to his heart, but he still like he could appreciate the Kelvin timeline. So it was cool to
Yeah.
see like those old school fans um,
Hmm.
still find things in the Kelvin timeline that they liked. So I
Yeah, and
guess it's doing its job for
it
sure.
is. It is, and it was really refreshing to see like a lot of positive takes on it.
Hmm.
I really did, like you, Dan. I was expecting more of a mixed reaction. My experience on other websites, reading comments,
Yeah.
would lead you to think that nobody likes this stuff.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of negativity surrounding a lot of this, and it was really cool to see that the people at least who are tuned into what we're doing, the Trek Live community per se, or people who are just finding us and stumbling onto a question we asked and responding, um, are on another planet from the people that I'm thinking about in some of these forums and other online communities. Um, So I was really glad to see a lot of positivity and a lot of open-mindedness. I do think that if we asked this question in 2014, 2015, in the wake of
Different
Into Darkness,
response.
I think it's a different response. I
Yeah.
really do think that Beyond um, opened up a lot of eyes and changed a lot of overall impressions of it. I think in a lot of people's minds it's 2-1 now. '09 and Beyond kind of being on the positive side of things, with Into Darkness being an outlier. Even if you don't like Into Darkness, if you're more fond of the other two movies, it's harder to be downright negative about it.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see that. There were some there was all kinds of takes. I saw people who said that Into Darkness was their favorite of the three. I saw people who said that they weren't as big on Beyond. I'm thinking of Ian specifically is not a Beyond fan. So there's, like all Star Trek, there's different takes on everything, and we certainly respect that. We're not here to tell anybody that we're right, you're wrong. There's infinite diversity, and infinite combinations is the name of the game. Like I say on Twitter all the time when people have different takes on things, but it was a surprisingly positive reaction, for sure,
Yes. Yes, it
to the
was.
Kelvin timeline as a whole. And we were also very overwhelmed number. I think we were remiss in saying that we got a lot of feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really cool to see a lot of people respond and have feelings worth sharing on this specific topic. Um,
Yeah, and it
so
was I can't remember who posted it, but something about kind of like, this is just an example, but what would the Borg look like? And
mm-hmm,
I'm just curious to see, like, okay, what other elements from the Prime timeline could be explained in the Kelvin timeline, and
mm-hmm,
what would that look like? So that would be kind of a fun thing to think about, and maybe
mm-hmm,
a Jerry Ryan cameo or something like that.
yeah,
But it's
mm-hmm.
just funny.
Well, yeah, like one of the cool things that the Kelvin timeline does is it does open up all these possibilities. You can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I just said, I would advise against really bringing back much of anything. I would lean much more heavily towards do something fresh, do something original. You're already kind
Yeah.
of treading on thin ice with, bringing back these old characters, and what people. I think people are hungry for new Trek
Mm-hmm.
rather than some of the older stuff. Um, but the Kelvin timeline does afford the option to, bring back these old things and put new spins on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they tackled a really big one with Khan and Into Darkness, and a tough one to sell, to longtime fans, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a big thing, such a big character that people feel passionately about. But there are so many corners of the Star Trek universe um, that they could put a unique spin on, tell things from a different angle.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you know,
think I think
mhm,
the recipe for success is kind of like something new, but with like old original things like sprinkled on top that just make, I don't know, like you said, fresh track that I feel like a lot of fans are itching for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And here's something kind of off the cuff that I'm just thinking of. Dan, when they announced that they were making a new series, initially, like the first big debate was, should it be in the Kelvin timeline or should it be in Prime? Um, when the show was just announced and that was unclear, what did you want? Did you want it in the Kelvin timeline or did you want it in Prime?
So was it February? I can't remember when it was announced. February of 2015 or
Something like that. November, might have been November or
November, something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah.
I mean, and this might be a good time to tie in what we're talking about next week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when I first saw it, I was like, oh no, this isn't gonna be good. Why are they doing this? That was my honest opinion of
Mm-hmm.
that, and I was just like, um, to tell you the truth, I wanted a prime timeline.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely wasn't opposed to Kelvin. I think, don't do the original cast, but maybe something else
Mm-hmm.
in the Kelvin timeline. I would like
Right.
to. I wouldn't mind seeing that, but at first I was like, oh, this is a mistake. This is CBS. People with money just trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel with more money and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that in the wake of, or it was before the 50th, so almost the 50th and stuff like that. So it was just like
Hmm.
I was really nervous. So, but I mean, the rest is kind of history now. But
Yeah.
what was your take on that?
I was open to both. I saw positives and negatives on both sides, but I was for a while there. I was kind of selling people, trying to sell people, on the idea that the Kelvin timeline wasn't a bad idea for kind of what I was just talking about. I felt like the Kelvin timeline could only stand to benefit from like further development, and I think movies like '09 specifically kind of laid the groundwork for some interesting story threads, like the fallout from Vulcan being destroyed and Vulcans kind of being scattered across the quadrant and
Hmm.
settling on this new planet. Like I
Yeah.
thought a TV show, set in that time period, set in that universe, set in that timeline, um, could kind of expand on those ideas. I was envisioning, you could bring, Carl Urban on for a couple episodes to play McCoy. Like there was any number of things that they could do. And I
Hmm.
realized that, the split of, CBS has the TV rights to Star Trek and Paramount has the movie rights makes that very difficult to do. And I
Yeah.
kind of figured that it was probably going to go the Prime way because of that. But at the time when it was being developed, I really did see merit to the idea of setting it in the Kelvin timeline and further fleshing out this universe that I'm assuming we're going to spend some time in on the movie side of things already. Um, I was not opposed to it. I was ready to be the big defender of that decision if
Hmm.
they were going to do it. But I saw the prime timeline as um, kind of playing with fire a little bit, and we're going to talk about this next week. I think we can kind of just come out and say that next week we're going to talk about Discovery, like initial thoughts. Um,
And that'll be
but
another pre-recorded episode. So
it
sorry,
will,
guys.
yeah,
We'll be back in 2 weeks. So
yes,
for another live show. So get excited
hmm
for that.
yes, we are excited for that too.
Because we've
Uh,
missed the live interactions for sure.
we do. Um, but when you go into the prime timeline, it's kind of like wading into a minefield with people's expectations, and it's harder to mess around with things and get away with it.
Hmm.
The look of things,
Yeah.
the Kelvin timeline allows you a little more flexibility with maybe pushing the envelope here, pushing the envelope there. I think people are more accepting of that. So I'm still I'm 100% in favor of the prime timeline because of all the history there and the opportunities to build on what's been built already, um, build upon what's been built already, through the 5 shows, um, and 10 original movies. But I would have been out there defending the idea of a Kelvin Timeline TV show.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that doing a prime timeline show is more difficult because with the Kelvin timeline, I feel like there's less toes to step on.
exactly.
So I think it would have been easier to do a Kelvin timeline, but I mean, it's not easy to produce a TV show, but I think
Right.
it would have been easier to do
Less
Kelvin.
risky.
Yeah, less risky. But I kind of respect them for going bold and
Me too.
going prime timeline, which I'm super
Agreed.
excited for,
Me
which
too.
we will allude to next week. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
definitely get excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's yeah. Um, I think we pretty much covered everything that we had planned.
Yeah, so
Uh,
if you guys have any other further questions about the Kelvin timeline, definitely down in the comments down below, over on Twitter, definitely on Saturday or today. You guys are watching this, kind of weird to talk about, but I'll be on Twitter in the comments so we can kind of just continue the discussion. So yeah,
yeah.
because I know
Always
you
happy to
guys will
listen.
have questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Please, expand on what we're talking about. If you have a different take, if you think I'm crazy for being open to the idea of a Kelvin Timeline show, let me know. Tell me why. Um, Anything that we've talked about, we're happy to listen and just extend the conversation. There's no end to things. There's so many other things we could talk about with Kelvin Timeline, more specific to each of the movies. Hit us up with anything that you have on your mind. Um,
Yeah, and we're kind of sorry that we can't have a live show for these next 2 weeks, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast
Mm-hmm.
because you know that's what's the beauty about going live. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think that's about going to do it for this week. As we've kind of alluded to, we've pretty much had it out there that next week we're going to tackle Discovery, our initial thoughts, thoughts, hopes, fears, predictions, I guess,
hopes and dreams.
hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of stick our flag in the ground as far as like what we're thinking it might be, what we're hoping it'll be. Not like specific story kind of stuff
Yeah, we're not
necessarily, but
predicting anything or anything like
yeah,
that. We're just yeah.
I think at least I'm thinking more along the lines of like tone and visual style, things like that. That I'm kind of curious about, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to kind of like have this kind of conversation on video, on recorded, and we can go back and look at it and see what we said, after it's been here and out there, and
Yeah.
you know, just the initial thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's next week, and then like Dan said, we'll be back live, the week after that, and ready to go,
Yep.
full bore again.
Yeah, but definitely get excited. The month of May is going to be awesome with a lot of
Yeah.
Trek Live content. Definitely like and subscribe this video. Subscribe to our channel, not to the video. But yeah, definitely give it a share and continue the discussion on Twitter and in the comments. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep, we'll see you. Thanks for watching, guys.